Hello, Faith family, and welcome to Missions Monday. As you can see, I am not in the normal studio or at my home. I am away for some R&R and just to get out of the COVID-19 insanity, I should say. I'm trying to keep my sanity. We have a special treat for you tonight for Missions Monday. And it's a special treat for me too, because we have a couple here, Paul and Crystal Burkhart, who I actually went to college with like 225 years ago. And I am thrilled to have them. We were in college a few years together, and Paul is originally from Michigan and Crystal's from Ohio. So this is a miracle you're seeing in front of you here already. We all know the allegiance to the Buckeyes we have here in the great Buckeye State, and we know the allegiance to the Wolverines in the not so great state of Michigan. And so I love these people. Got to watch their romance kind of unfold and remember them when they were pastoring, remember when they then moved on to Chi Alpha, and now they are in a land I've never been to. So I am excited to introduce you tonight to Paul and Crystal Burkhart, missionaries that we at Faith support. So thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah, happy to be. And I don't know if you know this, but I did my ministerial internship actually at Faith.
I think
way back in the day.
I think somebody told me that actually, and that's a really cool connection.
Yeah, I loved it.
And we were on staff at a Christian Heritage, which is in Avon, just a little bit east of Sandusky there. And so it's home. And I just want to interject for all the people that are already despising me because of blue and gold. I don't like them either. So I am a Michigan State fan. And so the wisdom of my enemy's enemy is my friend, that works. And so I root for the Buckeyes every time they're facing the Wolverines. I'm all about it. And we have 4 children, and they were all but one who was born overseas when we were world missionaries, were born in Ohio. And so please don't throw me out with the bathwater just yet.
You are back in the fold. You're back in the fold.
Yeah. I don't want to lose my family over this. So yeah, it's just not worth it. So.
No, once you're in the family, you're in for life. So you're good. You are all good. So I've got you on here, and I want to ask you a few questions because, as you know, Faith is a missions church, and we support many missionaries, whether it's global, United States, Chi Alpha, even some local partnerships that we have. And so far we've had 2 weeks of video interviews. And so you guys are our third interview, and I am thrilled, like I said, to have you here. But tell us a little bit about your mission field. Who's your target, and what does that look like?
Sure. We've kind of got an interesting role. We serve in Alaska. And before that, we served overseas for nearly a decade in Southeast Asia. And the Lord just miraculously moved us to Alaska with a very specific call about what we learned in Asia we were supposed to bring to Alaska. And we would say that was reproducing discipleship, essentially establishing house churches in rural village type places. And as you may realize, Alaska has hundreds of these rural places that are dotted off the network, off the road system, and with hundreds without any gospel witness. And so when we came to Alaska, we thought originally when we were called that we would end up living in a village and doing what we were doing in Asia. But the Lord directed us to Chi Alpha, which seems interesting, but with the goal of raising up disciple makers that would then be able to be mobilized into some of these rural places of Alaska. These villages oftentimes are 300, 400 people. And so the traditional model of church that we see in the lower 48 did not apply where we were at in Asia, and it doesn't really apply where we're at in Alaska. And so we, for the last 6 years, we have pioneered and established a Chi Alpha ministry. Mm-hmm. And now we are in phase 2, where we are training and mobilizing marketplace missionaries for villages in Alaska. Yep. And so we're super excited about that. God's just done some miraculous things as far as just the community. But now as we move all of our efforts into rural Alaska, it's just an exciting time.
Yep. That's awesome, you guys. And I remember when you were in Southeast Asia, and that was an exciting time as well. I know we've got some newer folks to the church, and so some of them are not familiar with the term Chi Alpha. Could you tell us a little bit about what Chi Alpha does?
Yeah, so basically in Chi Alpha, the one major thing that we focus on is basically discipleship. So what does it mean to follow Jesus, and how do I bring other people into that, and also want to train and develop other disciples? So we use this term transgenerational discipleship, which is basically disciples who make disciples who make disciples.
And it's, for those of you who don't know, Chi Alpha is established at the universities. And so Chi Alpha is across the country. It's a ministry around the world, actually, that has ministries focused on the college campus to do what Crystal said. And so we helped pioneer Chi Alpha for the state of Alaska. And so now there's 2 campuses that have ministries on them. We hope to have a 3rd campus here shortly. And as we said, we kind of have a unique Chi Alpha vision or mission in that we're mobilizing people specifically for our U.S. missions field of rural Alaska and the indigenous people of Alaska.
That's awesome. I love that. You know, we do get a lot of families that will watch Missions Monday together. So I'm going to throw you a question that I didn't send you earlier. Sorry.
I like this.
Good. So
I like surprises.
Oh, good.
I don't.
I don't either. I'm like, if it's not on there, don't ask it. But we've got a lot of kids that watch, and a lot of them, when they think of Alaska, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is igloos and Eskimos and movies of sled dogs. And so tell us, you know, what are some exciting things that you see in Alaska?
Igloos, and Eskimos, and sled dogs, and whales, and yeah, it lives up to its billing.
Yeah, it does. It's so funny when we take road trips with the kids. We have this like count that we keep of how many animals we see. So at any given time, we see fox and bear and moose,
caribou.
Yes.
Just the list goes on.
Coyotes, a lot of coyotes.
Yeah.
I'm personally most terrified of moose, surprisingly.
Okay.
Because they're not afraid of people.
Sure.
And they're really, really huge.
So where we live and where the universities are established are in the 3 major population hubs. And so we got Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. And so Anchorage is by far the largest. We don't live there. It's about 300,000 people. And then the next 2 larger towns, the largest, so we live in Fairbanks and Juneau, they're about the same size, about 30,000 people. And so our American life here is pretty similar to small town America in the lower 48. We've got things like a Walmart or a Costco and a Home Depot running around.
And that's it.
But we live at
no
Target, no malls. But we live at the end of the road. And so that's strategic for our family. We wanted to be at the edge of essentially the wilderness. And so once you step out of one of those metropolitan areas, you do encounter Eskimos. And that would be a term that is not preferred. So they would be Inuit or Native people. So you have the Athabascan, the Yupik, the Inupiaq. And when we travel to these places, it's super common to eat whale and walrus and to survive as they do. And a lot of these villages still don't have running water, indoor heat, or they have indoor heat, but running water, indoor plumbing. And there is very much a subsistence lifestyle. And so little less than half the population of the state lives like this. And so there are hundreds of these tiny little places that are surviving on rivers or small areas. And so, I mean, polar bears, I've seen polar bears, muskox. Listen, they're not like the ones in the Coca-Cola commercials. So little interesting fact is that polar bears, humans are part of their prey cycle. So they will actively hunt humans. They're the only North American animal that will do that. And so in some of our villages, when a polar bear is spotted, kids don't go out to recess and those kind of things. And so that's part of the world. And one of my favorite memories, we were in a village called Barrow, which is the northernmost village in North America. And I was there connecting with some of our friends and believers. And they dragged 2 whales up on the shore, and they were harvesting them for the village, and they were distributing the meat to the families to survive through the winter. And it's
Wow.
just it's a very surreal thing to live in this great land.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Polar bears are my favorite animals, of course, at the zoo. And as you can understand now, and the first time I ever died in the game Minecraft, when my kids started to teach it to me during this time, I was killed by a polar bear. So I was heartbroken. Heartbroken. So, and you may not know Pastor Tom's mascot growing up, the Margareta polar bears.
There you go.
So
we're connected.
Yeah.
We are all connected in this thing, the circle of life. So tell me, what is the current project you guys are working on? I know earlier you were saying you got a busy week ahead. You've got stuff just going. So what is the project you're working on right now?
Oh, it's a big one.
Well, why don't you just tell what we're wrapping up, and I'll jump into some of the big new stuff.
So every spring semester, we train our future small group leaders. So when all this COVID stuff hit, we had to transition it all online. So we have around 30 that went through and are going to join our current team of small group leaders into the fall. But then, yeah, so that kind of ends this year, is like the transitioning, passing of the mantle to new people.
Yeah. So in Fairbanks, we'll have just around 60 small group leaders next fall, and well over 100 for the state. And these are students who are basically in practice training to make disciples. They're making disciples, but the goal is that this is something that they'll learn to do at the university so they can do it the rest of their lives. And particularly, we hope some of them will be called to rural Alaska and continue to make disciples in those places. The newest project, that second phase that I was talking about earlier, is what we call What I Have, I Give. And I can give you the website or the link if you want to stick it in a comment or something. It's just whative.org. And that there's a video on it that would explain a little bit of what we're hoping to do. And we are mobilizing marketplace people, primarily teachers and nurses, giving them a year of training on location with cross-cultural training, missiology, as well as equipping them to be essentially house church pastors, and then sending them as teams into rural places. And so we have gone through our first cycle of recruiting and casting vision. It's its own 501c3 nonprofit and all that good stuff. And so we have 12 graduates from Chi Alpha in our locations, but around the world, the country, that are coming, and will start in August to go through their training cycle. And hopefully we'll be able to pioneer 2 villages in the fall of 2021 as they take jobs. Fall 2021.
Yes.
2021.
Oh, yeah, we're in 2020.
We're in 2020.
COVID problems. I don't even know what year it is,
Just
let alone day.
Yeah, exactly. The fall of 2021. And so one of the challenges for our state is, how do you support a pastor? How do you send a missionary to a place that, when there's hundreds of these locations and they're all isolated? And to raise money and support for a missionary or pastor is just, it just doesn't make sense.
It's not sustainable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what we saw in Asia when we raised up disciple makers, house church pastors, is that same problem was there, but we knew the gospel had to go. And so by raising up people who are getting salaries from the state or from the education system or the nursing system, their support is taken care of. And by going by teams, they're able to model what the family of God looks like and support one another, because many of these places are very difficult and very hostile to outsiders. And being able then to hopefully model Christianity in a way that will change culture and change communities in a godly way. We don't want to eradicate culture, obviously, but impact it for the Lord. And so just an exciting time for us, but cannot describe how many unknowns there are out there as we pioneer this venture that's really not been tried before in the state.
That's awesome. And ever since I've known you guys, I think probably the word that has always come to mind for me has been adventurous. Like anything you post, anywhere you go, it's like adventurous. And that's actually our family word for the year, is adventure. And so I'm excited to see what's going to be happening with you guys. We're not venturing out into indigenous lands, but right now it's an adventure to venture out of our home. So, we're still trying to do that. But
I think, like, it's so important for just that spiritual principle of getting out of what we're comfortable with. So, like, not everybody can go to an Alaskan village, but they can go to a neighbor and they can go to a coworker and just, you know what I mean? Like, really just love people for Jesus.
Some of my favorite stories of what God does, they're of the mundane. And when someone takes like a risk, we've got a young lady that's a small group leader. She posted, we've got our own ministry things going on Facebook, trying to keep everything, the community connected and moving forward as well, like most churches. But she posted about how she found bravery to communicate with one of her coworkers, who then found Christ. And over a year, her entire family, her kids, her husband, end up making decisions. And it was the mundane. It was being obedient in the mundane that became adventurous.
Yeah.
And that is fun.
That is really awesome. So how can we really be partnering with you guys in prayer right now?
Oh, there's lots of opportunities for prayer. Probably the biggest would be this What I Have initiative.
Yeah.
And that comes from the story out of the New Testament, what I have, I give. When Peter he looks at the beggar and says, I don't have silver and gold. What I have, I give. And we're asking people to give what they have, who they are, essentially to come as they are. But that initiative and the people that are stepping out in faith, they're having to raise support for the 1 year of training. And as you can imagine, this is a difficult climate to raise support in. We lead right now a missionary team of about 20 people in the state, and all of them are kind of wrestling with that same support. How are we going to be able to continue in this if churches in this quarantine and our supporters don't have work? And so that would be a significant issue. And then, do you have anything else?
I would say just personally, our family is kind of in like a transition year. Our oldest is a senior, next year going to be a senior in high school. She's started taking college classes. So we're kind of at this like really weird, like future, like what are we helping them prepare, and how do we like steward the time that we have left with them? And so just there's kind of like a lot of transitions with our kids, and so just praying for us to have wisdom as parents and stability, and just being that encouragement to them, I think would also be a prayer request.
Yeah, and then probably the last thing, if people would remember this, Scripture talks about men and women of peace, meaning that when Jesus sent his disciples out, that they would look for these people that would be a connection and help them be able to communicate and minister well in a village or a place that they were going. And we are actively praying for, seeking out men and women that will be these connectors in these locations that can then facilitate these teams to be effective. There's just a tough history in Alaska. It's a tough place, which is great. It's a strong, independent land, but with that comes just different challenges. And so asking the Lord would open, the doors and the paths. Again, Scripture says we make our plans, but God orders our steps. And if you'd pray that the Lord would order our steps, we would really appreciate that. We want to be obedient and following what He's leading us to. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Faith family, I hope that you have just fallen in love with Paul and Crystal Burkhart. They have an amazing family, and they are our adventuring missionaries up there in Alaska, doing the work of God, and in a really tough area, geographically, yes, but also with your target population, universities. And so we will definitely be keeping you in our prayers. And thank you, Faith, for your continued faithfulness in your giving. We are able to continue to support awesome, called and chosen missionaries like this precious family. So have a great rest of your evening, and we will see you soon, actually very soon, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. for the daily. So we are signing off here. Bye for now.